The stars had always seemed so quiet, peaceful even. For centuries, civilizations across the galaxy thought Earth was just another primitive planet, a blue rock tucked in a backwater system with nothing more than wildlife and weak, emotional bipeds trying to survive. The Galactic Order had thousands of reports filed under Earth. Unremarkable, inhospitable to advanced culture, no immediate threat. That was their first mistake. Captain Zivar of the Ular Dominion didn't want the assignment. He was too seasoned, too decorated for a mission like this, babysitting a scouting crew, orbiting a planet full of loud mammals and cheap entertainment broadcasts. Insulting. He had seen real war, fought in the blood wars of Thral, led fleets against the Morkathi Empire. Earth was a joke, but the jokes stopped 3 hours after landing. The scout team never returned. They had touched down in a rural part of the North American sector, somewhere called Montana, according to the outdated Earth maps they'd translated. A forested area with scattered settlements and minimal tech signals. It was supposed to be safe. Zivar had approved the drop himself, confident that the small 6-being team would gather the samples, set up monitoring beacons, and return by evening. But the sun set. The Earth grew dark, and the team was silent. No signals, no distress calls, just gone. Zivar's ship, the Tyrannax, hovered in low orbit, cloaked from human tech. He stood in the observation deck, staring at the planet below with a growing sense of unease. Something was wrong. Very wrong. "Commander," the navigator's voice broke the silence. "We're receiving a transmission, encrypted, old frequency, but it's coming from the surface." Zivar frowned. "Play it." The audio crackled, distorted, but it was unmistakably a voice, a human one. "You shouldn't have come here," it said. Calm, measured, too calm. Then a second voice, colder. "We know what you're looking for. We've been waiting." Zivar's blood ran cold. "Trace it. Now." His crew scrambled, pulling data, locking onto coordinates. It was close to the original landing zone. Same area, same trees, but different now. The trees were gone. Burned. "Captain," the tactical officer said, eyes wide. "The scout ship. It's been dismantled. No sign of the team. But, there's something else." A hollow image projected above them. A crude but efficient structure built from the wreckage. Barriers, perimeter sensors, cameras, and standing among it all were humans, armed, ready. "They turned our own tech against us," Zivar muttered, "in under a day." No species was that fast. Unless he issued the order himself. A retrieval squad. 10 of their best. Stealth armor, plasma rifles, neural dampeners. In and out, quick extraction. Only 2 made it back, and they weren't unscathed. One was missing a leg. The other, his mind shattered, eyes hollow, muttering nonsense over and over. "They smiled while they killed us," he kept repeating. "They smiled, like they were made for it." Zivar finally began to understand. Earth wasn't primitive. It was hiding, waiting. A planet of apex predators that had evolved not to hunt animals, but each other. For thousands of years, war wasn't just a necessity. It was a culture, a religion, a drug. Humans weren't peaceful. They were perfected violence. And someone, some group, was still watching. The messages didn't stop. Each one clearer. More direct. "You want a war?" the human voice said. "Then welcome to hell." The alien council didn't believe him. When Captain Zivar transmitted his emergency report back to the Ular Dominion's High Assembly, they accused him of exaggeration, of letting a few skirmishes rattle his judgment. Even after seeing the footage, blurry images of humans building kill zones from alien wreckage, laughing as they hunted the squad like prey, The Council dismissed it as an anomaly. Primitive aggression, they called it. Unrefined tactics. Javar knew better. He had seen dozens of species fight. He knew the difference between chaos and calculated violence. What the humans did wasn't panic. It wasn't desperation. It was methodical, trained. As if war wasn't just in their culture, it was carved into their DNA. Back on Earth, the second recon drone had just sent back new footage. This time, it wasn't just a few armed locals. They had found something buried deep beneath a mountain, some kind of facility, camouflaged so well that even the Dominion's scanning tech nearly missed it. But once they found it, Xavar couldn't stop staring at the feed. Weapons, thousands of them, not just guns, devices, prototypes, machines even the Dominion couldn't identify. Some looked ancient, others far ahead of anything humans should have been capable of. Experimental weapons etched with warnings, handwritten signs reading, "Project Doomspill and for use only if God abandons us." And people, humans in uniform, working around the clock. "Sir," said a technician, voice shaking, We ran a comparison on the symbols found on their uniforms. It matches data from Earth's own archives, military emblems. But this isn't official. This group doesn't exist in their public databases." Xavar's eyes narrowed. "Then who the hell are they?" The technician hesitated. "We believe they call themselves the Bastion, a rogue defense faction, hidden, autonomous, possibly centuries old." "How many are there?" "We don't know. The signals are spread across multiple continents. It's possible there are dozens of these facilities." Xavar stood in silence, staring down at Earth like he was seeing it for the first time. Not a weak planet, not a backwater, a weapon cache. He finally understood why they hadn't been discovered before. The humans weren't reckless. They were patient. Every war, every revolution, every civil collapse, it hadn't broken them. It refined them, hardened them. Suddenly, the ship's alarms blared. "Unidentified object approaching," shouted the navigator. It's coming from Earth." Xavar turned toward the viewport just in time to see it. A single missile, burning hot through the vacuum, screaming towards their orbit. They didn't think humans could launch that fast. They were wrong. "Shields up," Xavar barked. The impact rocked the Chiranax, sending half the crew crashing to the floor. Lights flickered. Fires broke out across the engineering deck. It wasn't just any missile. It was designed with Dominion tech. Modified. Upgraded. How had they gotten access? Then he remembered. The first scout team. Their gear. Their weapons. Humans didn't just kill. They learned. "Return fire?" his second-in-command asked, blood trickling from his brow. Xavar hesitated. His pride wanted revenge. His training screamed for a counterstrike, but something deeper held him back. A primal fear that the more they pushed, the more humans would reveal. And if this was only the beginning— "Not yet," Xavar said, his voice low. "We're not just dealing with another species. We've awakened something old, something made for war." There was silence across the deck as his words sank in. Then, a new message flashed on the central screen. Another Earth transmission. This time, video. A man stood in front of a ruined scout pod, Dominion rifle slung over his shoulder. Mid-40s, calm eyes, tactical gear, smiling. "We've read your history," he said. "You fight for conquest, for power, for ego." He stepped forward, gaze cold and steady. "We fight for the thrill of it." The screen went black, and for the first time in his long, blood-soaked career, Captain Xavar felt fear. The Dominion fleet arrived 2 days later. 10 ships, armed to the teeth, each one capable of leveling cities. The High Assembly had finally taken Xavar seriously, though they framed it differently in their official communiqué. A show of strength to suppress rising threats from Earth's primitive species. Zivar didn't argue. Let them think it was a show of force. He knew better. He stood on the bridge of the Cheranax, staring at the fleet formation glowing in orbit above Earth. Massive dreadnoughts hovered like gods over the planet, blocking out parts of the sky. To the average human looking up, they'd seem like new stars, or perhaps omens. But the humans weren't looking up in fear. They were preparing. "We've intercepted over a dozen human military broadcasts," the Coam's officer reported. "Encrypted at first, but now they're wide open, almost like they want us to hear." Zivar's jaw tightened. "Play it." The voice that came through wasn't the same man from before. It was a woman this time, clear, confident, and calm. "You want to dance with monsters?" she said. "Then come closer. We don't bite, unless you beg for it." Her voice was followed by coordinates. A challenge. The council ordered a tactical strike. A single city, chosen for its remote location and low civilian density. They wanted a clean message. Submit or burn. Zivar didn't bother arguing. He had already warned them. The Dominion didn't listen to warnings. They only learned through blood. The dreadnought Valkyrian was selected to fire. It charged its plasma array and released a sun-sized beam toward the coordinates Earth's transmission had given. The city vanished. At first, the Dominion cheered, until 30 minutes later, when the Valkyrian went completely dark. No communication, no response, not even a distress ping. They tried to send a patrol to investigate, but before the smaller cruiser could reach it, a new object appeared in its path. Small, fast, human-made. It wasn't a ship. It was a carrier pod, full of soldiers in exosuits, hurling toward the cruiser like a comet. The humans had launched a boarding party into space. Zivar watched in horror as the live feed from the cruiser flickered. The crew fought, but it was chaos. These weren't untrained ground troops. They were specialized killers, moving like they'd done this before. Who the hell trains to board ships in zero gravity? Within 7 minutes, the cruiser was silent. Another ship lost. Zivar slammed his fist on the command console. "How are they doing this? They don't have the tech. They don't have the infrastructure." "They have something else," whispered his lieutenant. "They have intent." That night, another human message came through. This time, it was a recording of the Valkyrian's bridge, its command staff, executed, hung upside down in gravity locks like trophies. One of the soldiers walked past the camera, pausing long enough to whisper something before the feed cut. "Try harder." The Dominion ships locked their defenses tighter. Every gun charged, every soldier on edge. No one had seen this coming, except Zivar. He sat alone in his quarters, watching recordings of human history. Wars, revolutions, genocides, political betrayals. He watched as humanity thrived in chaos, adapted to disaster, evolved in hatred. They didn't just survive war. They needed it. And now that the Dominion had given them one, they were going to show the galaxy what happened when you dared to fight a species that was built to destroy itself. And win. Zivar looked into the void beyond the viewport and whispered to himself. "We didn't discover Earth. We unleashed it." They tried diplomacy next. After the loss of 2 ships and over 300 soldiers, the High Assembly finally understood this wasn't a standard suppression mission. They sent a delegation vessel, a white flag ship, unarmed, with the finest diplomats the Dominion had to offer. It was supposed to open a channel, request peace, and establish negotiations. Zivar didn't believe it would work. Not because he thought humans wouldn't listen, but because he understood their game now. They didn't want peace. They wanted proof. Proof that the galaxy's most arrogant empires could bleed. The diplomatic vessel never made it to the surface. It was intercepted mid-descent, rerouted via a hacked guidance system, and landed deep in the Siberian wilderness. Dominion sensors lost track of the crew for nearly an hour. Then, out of nowhere, a new signal lit up their consoles. Live feed, broadcasted across every Dominion channel. The diplomats were alive, bound, blindfolded, and kneeling in a snowy clearing. Behind them stood 6 humans, dressed in mismatched combat armor and civilian jackets. One of them wore a Dominion officer's cape like a trophy. The same woman who'd spoken before stepped into view. She wasn't smiling this time. "You came to talk," she said, pacing behind the hostages. "But you didn't come to listen. So let's make this real simple." She pulled a Dominion translator collar off one of the diplomats and held it to her mouth. "We are not a species you conquer. We are not a species you monitor. We are not your next project." The feed cut out with a gunshot. Only one of the diplomats was returned, in pieces, stuffed into a Dominion cargo pod and launched back into orbit. A message burned into his severed chest armor. "This is mercy. The next time, we erase you." The Dominion Council panicked. No longer united in arrogance, they began debating retreat, escalation, even full-scale annihilation of the planet. Zivar listened to the arguments with a numb expression, knowing none of it would matter. The humans had already won. Not militarily, not tactically, psychologically. Fear was growing, not just within the Dominion, but across other species watching from the galactic fringe. Rumors spread, whispers in backwater stations, pirate hubs, smuggler dens. Earth is awake. They turned war into an art form. They don't fear death, they train for it. It wasn't just fear anymore, it was awe. Some species began pulling their observers off Earth. Others started forming quiet alliances with human factions. There were even reports of mercenary groups defecting to fight with the humans, for the thrill, for the chaos, for the ideology. Because for the first time in centuries, someone was standing up to the galactic order and laughing in its face. Back on the Kirinax, Zevar sat in his command chair, watching the latest footage from a drone they'd snuck past Earth's orbital grid. It showed a human base built inside the ruins of a pre-apocalypse city. Detroit, he believed it was called. What caught his attention wasn't the humans' training, or the captured Dominion tech they were dismantling. It was the wall, covered in writing. Thousands of names etched by hand. Some were Dominion, some were human, some were other. Beneath it all, a phrase scrawled in blood-red paint. "We remember every empire that came for us." Zevar exhaled slowly. This wasn't about territory. This wasn't about politics or expansion or defense. This was personal. The humans didn't just want to win. They wanted to humiliate, to burn away the myth of alien superiority, to show the universe that the species everyone dismissed as emotional, erratic, and savage had been training for this their entire existence. They were war incarnate, and now war had come home. Word spread like wildfire. The attack on the Dominion fleet, the butchered diplomats, the war wall, every piece of it leaked across the galactic net. Systems that had never even heard of Earth were now watching shaky footage of human soldiers using stolen alien tech like it was their own. Governments panicked. Empires braced themselves. For the first time in centuries, the order was cracking. But Earth wasn't finished. Not even close. Inside one of the buried facilities, this one somewhere in what used to be South America, an alarm sounded. Not a warning of attack, a launch sequence. Underground hangars lit up. Steel doors the size of city blocks slid open, grinding against decades of silence. Rockets, fighters, experimental orbital weapons, projects once buried by treaties, shame, or fear, now surged to life. Above the planet, Zevar watched as a cluster of sleek black ships rose into the atmosphere. "They're leaving the planet," said the sensor officer, stunned. Zevar stepped forward. "Where are they headed?" The room was dead silent for a few seconds, while data streamed in. Then the officer whispered, "Every ship is headed to a different Dominion colony." No one spoke. It was a message. Humanity wasn't just defending Earth. They were spreading. Colonial systems across Dominion space began sending distress calls within the hour. Mining outposts, agricultural moons, research stations, places that had never even heard of Earth were now under siege. But the humans weren't killing indiscriminately. They were targeted. They disabled communications first, crippled defense systems. Then they walked in, surgical, efficient, terrifying. They took Dominion officials hostage, raided archives, downloaded centuries of military data, then disappeared without leaving a single soldier behind. What they left instead were messages, written in Dominion blood, spray-painted across shattered walls and torn banners. "This is for the slave camps on Calyx 5. For the children of Razathul. Remember Eros Prime." Zevar felt his throat tighten. The humans knew, not just about the Dominion, about everything. All the dark history, the buried atrocities, the campaigns scrubbed from public record. The kind of secrets empires killed to keep quiet. Humans were broadcasting them across the galaxy, one attack at a time. The Dominion's grip was slipping. Worlds began to rebel. Minor species started rioting, demanding answers. Some even turned their weapons on their own governors. Because if humanity, a species no one had taken seriously, could rise up and fight back, why couldn't they? Zevar stared at the map of active human movements spreading through space like wildfire, red blips lighting up across 3 sectors now. "This isn't war," he murmured. "This is infection." And it wasn't random. It was personal. These weren't just acts of vengeance. They were surgical strikes against the Dominion's soul. For every colony they hit, every secret they exposed, they dragged centuries of cruelty into the light. And somewhere in the chaos, one name kept resurfacing. The Bastion. They weren't rogue anymore. They were leading. Every strike traced back to them, every encrypted feed, every target. And no one, not Zevar, not the Council, not the Dominion's most advanced AI, knew where they came from, how they coordinated, who led them. But one thing was clear. The Bastion wasn't trying to win a war. They were trying to break an empire, one memory at a time. They weren't born in one place. That was the first revelation. The Bastion wasn't a single government, army, or hidden nation. It was a collective, a mosaic of the broken, the forgotten, the betrayed. Soldiers who'd been court-martialed for questioning command. Scientists blacklisted for refusing to weaponize their research. Survivors of Dominion Black Ops programs. Even civilians whose homes had been accidentally bombed during peacekeeping missions. They came from everywhere. And they had one thing in common. The Dominion had destroyed their lives. The files Zevar recovered from a raided human installation told fragments of the story, not the kind of story told in textbooks or on diplomatic floors. This was the version scratched into walls by survivors too angry to die and too smart to forgive. It started after first contact, long before the invasion. The Dominion had sent observers to Earth under a false peace initiative. They studied, took samples, infiltrated governments, whispered to corporations, weaponized human division. When chaos broke out, wars, disease spikes, economic collapses, the Dominion stepped in with a cure, with order, and in exchange, Earth gave them their poor, their prisoners, their debtors. It was slavery disguised as salvation. Entire generations disappeared into off-world rehabilitation programs. Parents told their children they'd be back someday. They never came home, but some escaped. And those who did remembered everything. The Bastion was born from that memory. Its founder was once a Dominion war asset, a young girl taken from Nairobi, trained in zero-G combat, then discarded when her usefulness ended. They left her to die on a mining moon. She didn't. Her name was Asha 19, and she didn't just survive. She thrived, built a resistance cell, took over a Dominion skirmisher, and then, quietly, over the next 10 years, she built the Bastion. Seaver watched a recovered video of her, standing before a crowd in a crumbling underground hall. Her voice was low, steady, sharp as a blade. "They wanted us forgotten," she said. "But we remember, and when memory becomes weapon, empires fall." Behind her, a massive screen lit up with Dominion emblems, each one crossed out. Below them, names, not of targets, of crimes. Operation Star Drought, Mass Relocation Protocol 7, the Razdal Erasure, and finally, Earth, Containment Project 01. Zivar gripped the console until his fingers ached. Containment. That had always been the word they used. Not destruction, not conquest, containment. Because somewhere, someone high in the Dominion had seen what Earth really was. A weapon. Asha 19 and her followers didn't fight like rebels. They fought like survivors turned surgeons, cutting deep, with intent, with purpose, not to overthrow the Dominion, to expose it, and they were winning. They called it Operation Purity. The Dominion's retaliation wasn't just a strike. It was a full-scale cleansing campaign. Fleet carriers by the dozens, orbital siege platforms, kinetic bombardment payloads the size of mountains. Every protocol that had once been marked too extreme for civilized use was greenlit in a single day. No more diplomacy, no more attempts to study or contain. The humans had embarrassed them, publicly, violently, and the Dominion had never tolerated humiliation. So they did what empires always do when afraid. They overcompensated. Zevar watched from the command deck of the Chiranax as the Earth offensive fleet moved into position. Over 300 ships now, forming an orbital net so wide that even the moon cast its shadow on their hulls. The Earth below looked quiet. Too quiet. Scans showed movement, but no response. No launches, no countermeasures. "They're waiting," one of the junior tacticians said. "For what?" Zevar muttered, almost to himself. Then the order came from High Command. "Commence planetary suppression. The first wave wasn't even meant to kill. It was designed to blind, to rip out the planet's satellite grid, scramble the atmosphere with electromagnetic pulses, and reduce every power grid to smoke and sparks. But the moment the first EMP detonated in the stratosphere, something changed. Every Dominion screen on every ship turned black. Then static. Then a single phrase appeared, etched in blood-red letters across the fleet's entire HUD system. "We warned you." The scream of alerts flooded the deck. Systems went offline. II cores scrambled themselves in a panic. Even the Chiranax, the fleet's flagship, began to flicker and groan like it was being torn apart from the inside. "Multiple ships losing control," someone shouted. "It's not a hack, it's a virus." No one had seen it coming. The Bastion hadn't just prepared for this assault. They had designed it. They let the Dominion build their pride. Let them gather their forces. Let them march into orbit like gods descending from heaven. And then they pulled the trigger. 1,000,000 dormant code packets hidden in Dominion comms since the very first contact with Earth, now activated at once. A digital plague, written in languages Dominion firewalls didn't even recognize. Ships collided. Engines failed. Targeting systems spun out. Some ships turned their guns on themselves before anyone could shut them down. And then, the humans came. Not in fleets, not in neat, disciplined ranks like Dominion strategists would have expected. They came in waves, raiding parties, stealth pods, exosuits launched directly from mountain ranges, makeshift orbital gliders loaded with explosives, bristling with salvaged alien tech. One by one, Dominion ships started dropping from the sky, trailing fire like dead gods. Xavar's hands trembled. This wasn't just war anymore. This was revenge. Down on the surface, the Bastion launched its final operation, codenamed Ashfall. The goal wasn't to destroy the Dominion's army. That would have been easy by now. The goal was to broadcast. Every planet, every Dominion system, every species watching, everyone now saw what the Bastion saw. A live feed patched into galactic networks showed Dominion officers torturing prisoners. It showed slave pens, chemical sterilization camps, genetic experimentation, worlds harvested of all resources and left to rot. Footage pulled from Dominion archives, spliced with real-time camera feeds of soldiers screaming inside burning ships above Earth. And then Asha-19 appeared again. This time not in some underground bunker, but standing on the remains of a Dominion dropship. Blood on her boots, ash in her hair. "No more secrets," she said softly. Behind her, a burning Dominion flag toppled. "No more silence." She looked into the camera, eyes like frozen fire. "You taught us how to suffer. Now we teach you how it ends." She raised her fist, and the skies lit up. The orbital defense cannons, once thought disabled by the initial EMP wave, roared to life. Weapons long hidden in Earth's crust, beneath oceans, inside glaciers, even within ancient mountain ranges, now revealed themselves. Built not by modern governments, not by world powers, but by survivors. By engineers who never forgot. By dissidents who refused to move on. They'd been building this response for generations. The Dominion never stood a chance. By the end of the day, half the fleet was gone. The rest limped away, retreating, broken, silent. Xavar stayed behind. He didn't order his crew to fight, didn't try to flee. He stood on the bridge of the Chiranax, watching the Earth slowly rotate beneath him, and whispered to no one in particular, "We created this. We made them monsters." And somewhere deep in his soul, he knew they had only seen the beginning. The war was over, but the galaxy wasn't at peace. What was left of the Dominion scattered like ash in a solar wind. Systems that once flew their banners burned them in public squares. Colonies that once bowed at their feet now hunted their governors in the streets. The empires didn't fall with a grand explosion. They rotted, fast and from the inside. But Earth didn't celebrate. No fireworks, no parades. Because the Bastion had one last message, one final broadcast, days after the last Dominion ship left Earth's orbit. Asha-19 stood beneath the shattered remains of what had been a Dominion consulate in Geneva, its once pristine walls now covered in the names of the lost. Millions of them. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. Her voice was tired, honest. "You wanted to know what we are," she said. "What we were built for. Now you know." The camera panned slightly. Behind her stood not soldiers, but families, survivors, children who had never known peace, scientists who had cracked alien encryption just to survive, farmers who had turned their fields into minefields, every kind of human the galaxy had once dismissed. "We didn't want to conquer," she continued. "We wanted to live. But you made sure we could only live if we learned how to kill." She looked straight into the camera. "You built an empire on forgetting. We remembered everything." The screen faded to black. Then, a final image. "Let the galaxy rebuild. Without fear. Without you." And that was it. The Bastion didn't claim territory, didn't install governors or demand reparations. Earth remained quiet, its skies clear for the first time in months. The launch bays closed, the black ships landed and powered down. But the galaxy wasn't sure what to make of it. Some thought the humans were playing a long game, waiting to rise and rule from the ashes. Others believed they were too broken to continue, a flame burning too hot and too fast. Still, others whispered that the bastion wasn't finished, that there were other enemies, other monsters hidden behind flags and treaties and gold-plated promises. And deep down, everyone feared one thing more than war: silence. Because humans didn't say what came next. They just watched, waited. Zavar was taken alive, not by soldiers, not even by the Bastion, but by a group of civilians in a refugee camp he'd helped build, for optics, for propaganda. They found him hiding in a ventilation shaft of a downed cruiser and dragged him out into the light. They didn't kill him. They made him see. They forced him to walk through what was left of the Razthul archives. Let him read the real numbers, the death tolls, the classified experiments he'd signed off on without reading. Then they left him in a shack with a solar-powered screen looping Asha 19's broadcast. Over and over. It was said he stopped speaking after 3 days, stopped eating after 7, stopped existing, even as his body kept breathing. A symbol of a dying age. Elsewhere in the galaxy, a quiet revolution was unfolding. Species long considered lesser by Dominion caste systems began rising into their own. New alliances formed, not out of fear, but out of understanding. Small planets once bullied into trade pacts and military conscription started negotiating fairly. And in the middle of it all, Earth remained still, rebuilding, quiet, watching. But those who truly paid attention noticed something strange. The Bastion didn't disband. They didn't return to their homes and fade into memory. They spread, not to conquer, to guard. Outposts built in asteroid belts, listening stations planted near old Dominion border worlds. A ship seen every now and then in contested space, silent, black, marked only with a symbol. A broken chain, wrapped in flame. It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. That no matter who tried to rise next, no matter what empire grew fat with power and pride, humanity would remember. And when memory becomes weapon, empires fall. As the years passed, stories became myths. The war turned into cautionary tales for cadets, bedtime warnings for children of rulers. And yet, those who had seen the humans never forgot. Not their weapons, not their technology, not the look in their eyes. Because when the galaxy had tried to break Earth, it had only revealed what humans truly were beneath the surface. Not diplomats, not allies, not even rebels. They were scars turned into strategy, pain turned into precision, war made flesh. And though peace bloomed in the galaxy again, it bloomed under the long, cold shadow of a species no one would ever underestimate again. Because now everyone knew the terrifying truth. Humanity wasn't just made to survive war. They were built for it. Perfectly.